Hey everyone, I'm Saber. I'm the PM community's main content creator, if you haven't heard of me, and I'm back with another video on how to make content for Project M or Smash as a whole. Today we're going to talk about how to make tutorials. Tutorials are the main thing that new players or people who are trying to improve are going to look up when they're getting into the game or just trying to get better, and there's a severe lack of them in the PM scene. Until Erg started doing a Reddit series on the every month or so, he does a post on all the tech that various characters have. Until he started doing that, Ivysaur's up air had more documentation than all of the tech for probably half the cast. Just because there aren't a lot of people out there who make this content, but that makes the game even less accessible because then people don't know where to look if they want to get information. Whether it's as simple as how do I play a character, or as complicated as a specific or niche tech. So today we're going to break down how to make video tutorials, breaking them down into those two categories that I just described. First, we're going to talk about generally teaching people how to play a character, which is something that I've seen a lot of people talk about wanting to do, but it's something that's relatively difficult to actually approach. So, as the author of the most extensive and I think only complete character guide in Project M, which is the How to Play Project M Ivysaur guide on my YouTube channel, I'm going to walk through how you might want to approach structuring and making such a guide. And then we're going to talk about specific tutorials for tech or various other things you might want to teach people how to do. So first, let's talk about what you want to get out of the tutorial. You don't, for starters, you have something already done for you. You don't need to sell people on why what you're doing is important. If someone is looking up, how do I play Project M Ike? You don't need to sell them on why your guide is good. Your guide is going to be the only Project M Ike guide that exists. So you've already explained to them why it's important. All you need to do is actually teach them things that are useful in a manner that makes sense to them. We're going to get to how to read Smash EG in the second half. That falls under advanced tech. So for the character tutorial guide, there are a few ways that you can approach it. Some people like to get really specific. They talk about like if someone is jumping at you, you're gonna want to do X. When you get a grab, this is what you do, and they try to go really in depth. In general, I think that approach doesn't really work that well in PM because it's a game that has a ton of matchups compared to Melee, and each of those matchups are also way more complex, and the combo game is way more varied than something like Ultimate, where you can just tell someone, oh, if you're playing Mario in Ultimate, when you get a grab, you're always going to do down throw up it. That's just what you do. In PM, if I got a grab with Ivysaur, I might do any of her 4 throws, depending on the opponent, their percent, and where I am. So, in general, I think your goal when you make a tutorial shouldn't be to teach someone what to do in every situation. It should be to give them the tools they need to make the right decisions. So, for starters, you want to make sure people understand what the character does. So when you start off your video, usually the first thing you want to do is give a brief introduction of what the character does and how they play. For Ivysaur, this might look something like explaining her combo game, with a special focus on her healing and solar beam mechanic, because that's the thing that really makes her stand out, as well as talking about things like her edge guarding, and then on the con side, talking about her things like tether recoveries and susceptibility to crouch canceling and dash dancing as reasons why someone might or might not want to play it, and then give them a sense of what that game plan that she has generally looks like. You want to wall people out, build up solar beam charge, really take them for a ride off a hit, and then eventually convert it into either an edge guard or a solar beam. In like 20 seconds, that's how you break down what a character is and what they do. After that, there are a lot of, like I said, different approaches to how you might want to make a character guide. I found the best one is to break the game down into like different categories that you might be in, and then talk about what you might want to do in each of those types of positions. So if we look at the Project M Ivysaur guide that I made, you can see that I have a bunch of videos here. I have an introduction where I explain exactly what I said, this is what the character does, and I also lay out what the guide is going to look like. Then I talk about this is what you're going to do in neutral. These are the moves that you might want to be throwing out safely. You might want to space with projectiles, zone with longer range moves, etc. When they're in the air or you have some kind of advantage with they're not in hit stun, this is what you want to do. This is how you juggle with Ivysaur. When you hit them, this is what you do in Punish Game. And then edge guarding, disadvantage, recovery, etc. The reason why I say that even though I'm breaking out each of these categories, that you never want to tell someone what to do in every situation is because it's literally not possible in a game like PM. If we click into my How to Play PM Ivysaur Punish Game Guide, um, this video is 14 minutes. If I tried to talk about even all of Ivy's basic bread and butters on common categories like fast followers, semi-fast followers, etc., this video would be over an hour because that information is not only too complicated to quickly convey in a video format for someone who's just trying to get the basics, it's also not that useful. It doesn't matter if you know that up throw up B confirms on Wolf at 110 if you don't understand why you want to be using up throw and why up B is the finisher in the first place. So instead, taking this video as an example, I walk people through. I kind of describe Ivy's moves, and I say, the use of up B right there is to kill people. It's a finisher. The fact that I randomly got to up B is actually insane. But I basically walk through each of Ivy's moves, and I explain this is what they do, this is the point of using them, this is what it covers, and then I move on to the next one. And then I basically teach people this is how you should approach comboing with Ivysaur. These are the things you want to think about. This is generally a move that is good or bad on various combo weights. And then I walk them through my thought process, which is actually looking at a couple combos. For this, I played a couple combos full speed, and then I slowed them down and talked through the individual decisions I was making, talking about how exactly I got to each move there. Like, what are the decisions you want to be keeping in mind as you combo with Ivysaur? And then we sped it up again and went full speed so that it made more sense to people. So that was my approach to teaching people how to combo with Ivy, and I did it in about 10 minutes. Whereas again, if I were to talk about just how to combo with Ivy, that would be like over an hour. If I were to talk about how I combo with Ivy, that's like several hours. Even just breaking down these 3 combos, I think, is about 5 minutes of the overall guide. But it's a good example to help people see how I'm thinking about the game. And even if they don't necessarily think about the game the same way, all the information that I'm putting out is informed by how I think about the game. So it's important for them to understand that, if only so that they can understand where I might be wrong if they disagree about certain philosophies or how to approach comboing. So let's go back to the outline. So that's, generally speaking, like I said, I broke it out into all these different categories. And I talked about this is what you do in Punish Game, this is what you do to edge guard. Edge guarding is a category I think you can get a little bit more flowcharty than talking about like neutral or Punish Game. But even still, you just want to give people the tools that they might need and explain to them how they want to think about applying them and picking the right situations so that they can make the good decisions rather than just knowing, oh, Saber told me I'm supposed to invincible nair from ledge when Luigi does side B, without knowing why, because that means if they do something different, they won't know what they should be doing in response, and they don't know how they should adapt to what's not working. They just know what I told them to do. On top of that, you always, if they're out there, which they usually are now, thanks to, again, Erg's post and so many character discords, tell people where they can get more information. Tell them where they can watch top players for their character. Tell them where they can find Discord, other video guides, etc. The goal from tutorials should never be to leave people feeling either overwhelmed because there's too much information and they don't know how to process it. So, for example, if I did that 3-hour guide on how I combo, that's way too much information for a new IV player, and most of it won't be useful. They might take away the wrong things because they can only focus on so many things while watching a guide without actually taking a break and going and implementing things. So the shorter and more to the point you are, the more sure you can be that they'll take the important points away when they finish watching the video and actually start to apply it to their gameplay. But also, you don't want to go the other way, where you've given them like a couple of very brief and basic things to work on, and they have nowhere to go from there. There are no other tutorials. They don't know where they can find someone to ask questions other than commenting on your video. They want to know where they can go next, basically. So you need to strike that balance where you give them a place to go to after this, but you also don't overload them with information. And the last thing that I think is really important and that I kind of just talked about as I was doing the combo game guide is always show examples from real games. It's really easy to make a guide where you talk about like things that should work on paper. Like, in theory, you should always do X because this is really good. But if it's not practical and you can't explain why it's useful to someone, it's probably too high level or too niche to be including in an overall overview of how to play a character. For example, when I talk about Punish Game, and I'm going to go back to that video for a little bit, when I talk about Punish Game, I very briefly mention, I think the third combo in here has a flop block in it. And I say, like, this is a tool that you have. It's something that you may or may not want to keep in mind. But I don't spend 10 minutes talking about flop block, and I certainly wouldn't do it if I didn't have examples. Because the point is that any information conveyed in a guide should always be practical. And so the best way to get around that is by showing people this is how it actually works in the real world. When you go play someone in a tournament or on net play or whatever, this is how you can do it. So again, for the Punish Game video, I walked through 3 examples from real games, one of them from a tournament set, and explained, like, this is me reading what a real person would do in response to things that I'm doing. And so I'm showing, not only have I walked you through the concepts, I've spent minutes going over combo theory and what all the moves do, etc. But I'm also explaining to you how they're used in practice and showing you what it looks like when it all comes together, so that you have an idea of what this looks like rather than just a bunch of disjointed pieces of information that might not necessarily come together to be a cohesive picture. And that's pretty much it. A lot of people think they want to make a guide to how to play a character, and then they realize that it seems really intimidating and they don't know where to start, and so they don't do it. It's not that scary. I'm happy to help people if they have outlines or they're trying to figure out, like, I want to talk about how to play this character and I want to make resources, but I don't know how. I'm happy to be what's the word? To let you bounce ideas off me. There should be a word, sounding board. That's it. But in general, it's really not that complicated. Especially in PM, the bar is really low to make tutorials. People are happy to see content. I was shocked by how many people were interested in the Ivy guides, just because literally there are no PM guides, so even non-Ivy players were watching. But yeah, they can be really simple. They don't need to have fancy graphics. The best thing I would say you can do is make sure that they're scripted and outlined so that you're not just rambling into a camera for an hour. Really make sure that you're being intentional about what's on the screen, what information you're conveying when you're talking to the audience, so that they take away the right things. So in a nutshell, that's how you make a character tutorial for PM. Now let's talk about the other half of tutorials for the PM, which are teaching people how to do specific things. Nope, I scrolled up and then it scrolled back up. I'm happy to be someone's rubber duck as well. Let me tell you, Eon, I would love to be a rubber duck. Also, Jacob, if there's interest, like, at some point I would be down to, like, watch VODs and, like, just explain, like, these are the decisions I made, or, like, these are decisions someone else should make if you want VOD review, Ivy, or just other characters. I don't do that because, honestly, I think it would be boring for, like, 99% of people. Not that I think my streams, like, normally are interesting, but, I think at least a little bit when I do content-related streams. But, I mean, I've done stuff like that just in voice call with Ivy Core. I do that all the time. I just don't ever share it with people because, again, I think it's pretty boring usually. Okay. So the second half of this video is how do you make tutorials for doing something specific. Oops, let me move it up so you can see the caption. How do you make a tutorial for how to do something? That something might be character specific. It might be how do you flop block with Ivysaur. It might be how do you combo is maybe too broad, but like how do you use quick draw as Ike? Because there are about 18 million quick draw mechanics with Ike. They're like Squirtle's various bullshit. Or it might be something universal. Hyperflame has some great videos on how do you B-reverse, B-turnaround, and wave bounce in PM, which are 3 mechanics that are pretty similar but all have very slight but distinct differences. There are a ton of integral PM mechanics that have no documentation out there for how you actually do them. For example, if you were to Google, like, how do you aerial glide toss in Project M, I don't think there's a guide for it, which is insane. But it's true. And so the point is, again, the bar is super low. If you want to make something, go for it. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to tell you how to do it. Um, for this, I'm going to go over an example that I made relatively recently. I made a video talking about how to do push-offs in Project M. If you don't know, push-off is, I'm not going to repeat the whole tutorial. It's where you walk into someone as they're standing at the ledge and then they fall off. And so I'm going to use that as kind of my example to show you this is what you should do when you're making a tutorial. They can be really short and to the point. Again, if you want to look up really good ones, Hyperflames is also fantastic. The Melee team over at SSPM Tutorials has some amazing ones, and they've been doing it for years, so they pretty much have it down to a science. But in general, this is the outline you want to follow. Oh, PM Essentials did AGT, you're right. I keep forgetting Jason had that channel. Okay, so in general, the first thing you want to do with any tutorial is show them what you're talking about. You need to hook them in so that they see something and they go, oh, I want to learn how to do that. Because unlike a character tutorial, where they're by definition almost always going to be looking it up because they want to learn how to play the character, you need to sell them on why what you're doing is not only a video worth watching, but why you're showing them something that is worth implementing into their gameplay. Almost anything that you're making a guide for requires effort to implement. And so you need to explain off the bat, or at least show them how it can be used so that they have enough interest to watch the video. The second thing you need to do is explain everything that they need to know about why it works before you even walk them through what you're actually doing. So let's go to the push-offs video, for example. So for push-offs in Project M, the first thing that I need to do before anything else is showing them what a push-off is. And so you're going to see I kind of walk a 0 seed over the ledge. We're going to do this in double speed. You see I'm explaining that I can push people. As they get to the ledge, I can push them off. So already I'm just setting up very basically, this is how the mechanic works. I walk into them. If I walk into them while they're at the ledge, they fall off. In about 10 seconds, I've explained the entire mechanic that you need to understand behind pushing someone off the ledge. That's important because the next step is showing them why that information is important. In this case, this isn't a tutorial about how to perform something technical. It's just about walking them through an application of something that they might use or not use, but that already exists. They just don't understand it, which is how to combo someone out of pushing them off on ledge. The next thing I do is explain to them why that thing they just learned, in this case, how you can push someone off of a platform or the stage, is important. So I show them, you can push someone off, and then you push someone off and they fall off. If there's not a ledge, then they just fall if they're facing the other way. If you push someone off, then you can use that to combo them. So then I start showing examples of how you can push someone off and combo into, for example, a Game & Watch up smash, IV up smash. I think I use an example somewhere in here of a footstool. But so, let me see. Yeah, so this half of the video is just explaining literally what they are. And then I start talking about how you can apply them. These are the ways that they can be used against you, which is that someone can get pushed off and then they can counter hit you, or they can grab the ledge. This is how you might counterplay someone trying to do that exact thing. But there's also applications for it that you can use. And so I show you can push them off, or if you push them off with a running up smash, then they fall off. I'm still doing this in double speed. Then they fall off and you can up smash them. So I start moving into about 3 minutes into the video. I'm already showing you this is what you can do. This is why it's important. This is the application. And already it seems pretty interesting, right? This is something that could set up into Ivysaur up smash. It could set up into a lot of kill moves. Getting kills is pretty important in winning in Project M. But is this actually something useful? So what do I do next? I go to a clip of a top 50 player beating another top 50 player in bracket. I show them Nezoji doing this, where he literally pushes off Dirtboy, and then he wins, and he goes on to win a set. That set gets him to top 50, and I walk them through, this is an application in real time of this being used. And for a video like this, that's all you need to do, because I'm just showing a basic mechanic. I'm just explaining this is how push-offs work. all you need to do is walk into them. So there's not really anything technical that I would need to show off. But let's say I want to explain like a specific piece of tech. Maybe I want to teach someone how to flop lock, which, surprise, surprise, I have a video on somewhere. Give me a second to find it. Actually, I'm going to show how to double heal, which I think is a bit of an easier explanation. Maybe. No, I don't think so, actually. I should have planned that out more. I know one of these videos is a hand cam. Basically, what I'm looking for here, basically, when you're showing something that's more complicated than just walking into someone and up smashing them, the last thing you want to do is show them how to actually do it. One, you want to tell them what to do, obviously, but it's even better if you can show them. That can be done in a couple ways. You can do it by having inputs on the screen. There's a lot of various tools out there now where you can plug it in. You can just download it, and then as you play Smash, your inputs will show up on the screen, and you can record that. Or you can go with something a lot more basic. So here's the first video I made on how to flop lock. I kind of explained this is how you do it. And then there's actually a hand cam where I literally have I think it's my phone. Yeah, you can see, you can actually see like what inputs I'm physically hitting to do this. So that someone can get a sense of like, okay, this is how it works. This is what I would want to do if I'm trying to replicate that combo or that technique. And that information is useful so that if you're trying to figure it out and you can't figure out what you're doing wrong, just a verbal explanation of what inputs to do might not be all that helpful. Sometimes you need to see someone do it, whether that's a hand cam or just seeing the inputs, something that helps people actually visualize what it's supposed to look like and maybe identify what they're doing wrong can be really helpful to help someone learn, especially if they're not already in your character's Discord or have easy access to like just ask you, for example. So that's the last step that you really need in a tech-based tutorial, is you show them how to do it, and then you bring it all back at the end and you explain, now that you've seen this and you understand how it works and why it works, this is why it's important. So you go back to that hook at the beginning of, this is this cool tech, it's useful for this reason, you should learn how to do it, I've taught you how to do it, you should go out and implement it. And then again, as always, link them to any other resources that might be useful. These days, that's probably just Ode's Reddit posts, but character discords as well are always good if it's a character-specific thing. Or if it's a universal mechanic, you can just link them to like the P+ Discord so that they have at least somewhere they can ask more questions. So, again, for both videos, the goal is pretty much the same. First, if you haven't already, which you have by definition with the character ones, you need to establish what the point of this video is and why they should care about it. Then you want to briefly walk them through what they need to understand in order to make those decisions to use whatever information you're giving them. What do you need to look out for as an IB player? How do push-offs work before you can begin to apply them? And then how do you actually execute? How do you make decisions playing a specific character? How do you use this tech in practice, both by performing it and actually implementing it in a real game against real people? And then you tie it all together by, again, explaining to them very quickly what you learned, why you might use it, and linking them to other resources and information that they might want to use to continue improving. And if you've been paying attention to this video so far, you might notice that in a tutorial for a tutorial, I've done all of those things while teaching you how to make guides. So in that very vein, I'm going to summarize by explaining not only have we talked about how to make 2 different types of Smash-related tutorials, but also why it's so important. As PM is returning to LAN, we're going to have a bunch of new people who are hopefully getting into the game. At least fingers crossed. Riptide is already hitting massive numbers. We're hopefully going to continue to grow as we work with the Melee and Ultimate scenes to get more event crossover. And that means that as people want to learn the game, they're going to naturally want to learn more about how to play it and how to improve. The more of those resources that are easily accessible for them, by easily accessible, I do not mean hidden in a pinned channel in your character's Discord, the more likely it is that they're going to find them, be interested enough to learn and implement from those tutorials, and actually stick around and improve. So, that's why making guides is so important. It's not just a way for you to talk about your favorite thing, it's not just so you can pass down the knowledge you have before you who maybe quit at some point. It's so that you can help people get into the game in an accessible way. And the more content that's out there, the more inviting the game is. Because nobody wants to play a game when no one's talking about it and you have no resources if you need them. It's a lot easier to pick up a game like Melee or Smash Ultimate where you can type into YouTube, how do I play Melee Thoughts? And you'll get like 20 million guides. Whereas if you type in, how do I play Project M Ivysaur, you get one. And that one is a lot more than you'll get if you type in, how do I play Project M, and then insert like 90% of the cast. So the more we can fix that and the more accessible we make our game, the more likely it is that people not only try it out, but actually stick around. Thanks for watching, and the next video of these I'm going to do is going to be on how to make combo videos, which is going to be about 5 times as long as this, if I had to guess.